Welcome to our international press review here on France 24. In the papers it is called today with Chris Moore. Chris, where are you going first?
Well, Mark, let's start off with these controversial plans to try 6 Guantanamo inmates in front of a military tribunal. You were hearing about that in the news. The UK paper The Independent leads on that with a typically striking front cover there. Justice ? Well, not really, says The Independent, saying this is all a bit of a kangaroo court. Look inside The Independent and there's profiles of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, one of the supposed 9/11 masterminds, and the 5 other suspects who will be up on trial here. The Independent saying that all this is at best constitutionally dubious because of the military tribunal that will try them, and a desperate attempt by the Bush administration to justify actions that they've put in place in the war on terror. That's a theme taken up by Stephen Lee Myers in an editorial in the New York Times. Trials focused to suit Bush, he says. Now, as I'm sure you've noticed, Mark, as has Stephen Lee Myers and everybody else, it's election year in the US, and he says that's how we should see this whole controversy. The White House, he says, is seeking to lock in some of the more controversial things that have happened since 9/11, wiretapping, waterboarding, the Iraq War. And he says that actually most Americans are not against some of these tough measures if it's going to protect them against further terror attacks. So he says here that the Bush administration is looking at, firstly, to enshrine its own legacy, but also to underpin and support whoever is eventually chosen as the Republican candidate. Rudy Giuliani, the 9/11 candidate, may be out of the race, says Myers, but the 9/11 presidency is far from over.
Okay, big issue there in the States and beyond, of course. Now, sports stories.
Sports indeed, the famous Dakar rally. Let's look at El Watan, the Algerian paper. The Dakar without Dakar, they say. This, of course, because the race is moving from its home in the Sahara Desert in Africa to the Atacama Desert in South America. This in response to the terrorist threat which saw a Mauritanian stage of this year's event called off. L'équipe Viva el Dakar, says the French sports paper. Argentina and Chile will now be hosting this. There's some fantastic photos of the route in L'Equipe there. It's, the Sahara is pretty spectacular. The Atacama's not bad either. Valparaiso, the finishing point there, you can see a photo of some sand dunes and a little car.
Great shots as ever in L'Equipe. How do they react to the idea of taking it sort of away from its kind of French roots? I mean, obviously the Paris angle's been dropped, so it starts in Lisbon, then goes to Dakar. Then obviously the Dakar angle, which is the kind of the French colony type angle, that's gone completely. How do they react to that?
Well, it is a French thing, but it's become increasingly international, obviously over the years, and I think the terror threat has really prompted this move, and people have been thinking about it for the last couple of years. The organisers were saying they've actually been in touch with authorities in South America for the last 2 years or so, thinking that this might have to happen. At the moment, it's only planned for 1 year, 2009, I think it is, but it could become permanent. So, got to grow up and move on.
So one desert is like a desert. Grow up and move on. Good line. What's next then?
Stolen paintings, Mark. In Switzerland, what's been described as one of the most audacious art thefts in history. $160 million worth of paintings stolen on Sunday from a gallery in Zurich. A Cézanne, a Degas, a Van Gogh and a Monet. That's right, just 4 paintings that were worth that amount of money. Le Figaro, you can see a picture of Cézanne's boy in the red jacket there, one of the paintings that was pinched. They say it's the most audacious theft for 20 years. 24 Heures, the Swiss paper, they're understandably very upset about this whole thing. Museums broken into like banks, they say. And they have an interview with the distraught director of this museum, who says, unsurprisingly, that he's looking at reviewing security procedures after this. But he also gives a kind of grudging, if horrified, respect to the 3 gentlemen who were thought to have stolen these. Didn't have much time to do it. They headed straight for the valuable stuff. If they'd gone for anything more, it would have been too heavy, and they stashed it in the boot of the car, and off they went.
Very discerning thieves, and a very discerning press review too. Chris Moore, there, our international press review, watching France 24. Stay with us.